Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen-Pereira. The Supreme Court has once again on Thursday made a strong observation on the situation of prisoners lodged in jails. The Supreme Court has issued instructions to all state governments to make changes in prison rules. During the hearing, the court said that in all the states, prisoners' rights should be fully taken care of. Also, the court observed that prisoners sentenced to death should be allowed to meet psychiatrists. In November, during a discussion on the plight of the jails, the court had said that there are very poor arrangements for prisoners. Upkeep of jails has not been undertaken for years. Toilets and sewage systems are not cleaned in jails, and there is not enough room for children of prisoners in the jails as well. The list of problems is really endless. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze what needs to be done to improve our prisons. Joining me on the program today are Vartika Nanda, prison reformer; Vipul Mudgal, Director, Common Cause; Sipal Singh, former IG, Punjab Police; and Satya Prakash, Legal Editor of the Tribune. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Vartika Nanda, I'd like to begin the program with you. Before we try and talk about the problems and the solutions, let's first try and understand and analyze what is the state of our prisons today.
See, I've been visiting prisons across India for a long time now. And every prison has a different kind of a culture. And it depends on who is heading the prison and what is the culture of that particular prison and what exactly they want to do. See, in most of the prisons, the most important thing that an officer keeps in mind is that the head count should remain the same. So whatever the head count is in the evening, all the prisoners should be there. Now their health and their other issues generally take back seat. And it consists of many problems. Overcrowding is one part of it, but apart from that, there are many issues which are not even looked at. They are never addressed. For example, issues related to their mental health, issues related to the children of the inmates, and also how much time do they get to meet their families. What is the other modes of communication available to them? There are many prisons where even now inmates hardly get a newspaper to read. Watching a television is something which is like a luxury for them. Though most of the prisons actually boast of having a television set in the barrack, but if you visit these prisons, you find that what is being said and what is happening, there's a huge difference between the two. And apart from that, since this is a very neglected area and media is also not allowed to visit to see the prisons very frequently, so we generally do not come to know what is happening. Prisons become news when there is either the courts saying something about the condition of the prisons, or else there's sometimes some kind of a bad news which comes out of a prison. But prison is much beyond that. There are lots of things which happen inside a prison. There is a creative aspect of prison. There are many other issues which an inmate goes through on a daily basis. But since prisons are treated as a different part of the society, we do not know much about them. And I certainly feel overcrowding is not the only issue.
Okay, absolutely. We'll talk about the several issues really as far as prisons are concerned. Vipul Mudgal, what is the biggest problem really as far as prisons are concerned? Vartika is suggesting that overcrowding is not the only problem. There are several other problems. According to you, what is the biggest problem?
I think the biggest problem in Indian prisons is the over-representation of the vulnerable community. The poorest, the SC, ST, minorities, women, children are overrepresented. We did a study of policing, and as part of that study of policing in 22 states, we looked at the state of the prison also, and we found that except 4 states, the percentage of people, scheduled tribe people in the prison is much more than their population. Probably 4 times, 7 times, 8 times more.
Why is that the case?
Because the poorest, there is some kind of a bias in the whole system, in the criminal justice system against the poor. The scheduled caste and the minority in all 22 out of 22 states, over representation of minorities, under representation in police diversity, and over representation in prisons. I think this shows that we are as a society very anti-poor society. So I think that is very big thing. And the second thing is, I was looking at some CAG reports, and the CAG reports say that in a large number of cases, they studied about 11 states, prisons and hundreds of prisons in these 11 states. In 7 prisons in Rajasthan, 150 prisoners contracted deadly diseases like AIDS and TB after coming into the prison. Right before entering the prison, they did not have these diseases, which means they contracted them inside the prison. The other thing is that Swachh Bharat has not reached the prisons of India.
All right. Satya Prakash, would you agree with that assessment that,
Well, to my understanding, the biggest problem is the number of under trials, the percentage of under trials we have in our prison. Almost 70% of the prison population is under trial population, and we don't have. So far as the prison population and prison population ratio is concerned, India is one of the best countries. If you look at US, they have 700 plus, 737 or something per 1 lakh population, which is huge, and that too only 21% are under trials. Rest all are convicted criminals. So US is a problem. Same is the case with Russia. There are almost 600 something per 1 lakh population. People are in jails, and China and many other countries, even UK, they are much below India. So India is one of the best countries if you judge it on the parameter of population and prison population ratio. But the real problem lies in the number of under trials we have in prisons. That is almost 70% of the prisoners are under trials, and here lies the problem. If you tackle that, I think our prison, like suppose a particular case is pending for 10 years, 15 years. If that can be tackled, a criminal case can be handled within a year or 2 or 3, the entire problem of prison population can be handled. And there have been efforts on the part of the government, civil society, and even police and justice administration system. But whatever have been done, much still is required to be done. What has been done is it's just a fraction of the problem has been solved. Rest of the problem is still there. The only credible effort that was on the part of the government was 2 efforts. One was plea bargain they introduced in 2005, which came into effect in 2006. That was aimed at reducing the number of under trial prisoners. And second was introducing an amendment to the CRPC, was section 436A, which allows a prisoner to be released if he has already spent half the prison term if he were to be convicted. In that case, the person has to be released, and ever since that has been introduced, many prisoners have been released, but the entire system is working at such a slow pace that even that has not got its desired result.
All right. Let me go across to Mr. Sipal Singh now. Mr. Singh, as from the other side, from your side of it, what are the problems really that the police face as far as prisons are concerned, and what kind of reforms do we need to bring in really?
I'll take you back to the history of the prison reforms in India within 2 minutes. You see, earlier, before the partition, 1919-1920, a reform committee was constituted, and it was said precisely the same thing, that the prisons are overcrowded. One of the recommendations was that with the increase of the prisoners, we should increase the accommodation also accordingly. This recommendation, along with a few other recommendations, were accepted somewhere in 1949 by Paksawa committee, and they said, all right, the diversion took place, that we'll go to some postal jail, some labor will be required so that some people go out. But the problem of overcrowding continued. Then, once there is overcrowding, the administrative and the logistic structure is not upgraded accordingly. Now there is no logistic structure. I will tell you what. In Punjab, Indian Institute of Ahmedabad conducted a study on prison reform. It indicated that more than 60% of people were suffering from skin diseases. A number of people were suffering from other diseases which are contact diseases. Why it happened? They say the blankets were being used from one to another, and due to overcrowding of the prisoners, the blankets are being used repeatedly by one prisoner and the other prisoner, and sometimes with the result of the diseases. So basic thing is that infrastructure and the prisoner are not in comparison aligned, because if the prisoners are this laid down, therefore these prisoners, they should be there. For example, Nabha jail in Punjab, as against 460 odd people, which are 50 odd prisoners which are sanctioned, we had at one time about 1100. You tell me the overcrowding. Was the infrastructure raised? No. What I am saying is First of all, the basic problem continues to be about infrastructure as well as the accommodation. Now, consequence to this, there are a number of other problems. Solutions have been given. Solutions have been suggested. For example, 66% of the population, prison population, is under trial. It has already been spoken by one of the panelists here as how to meet it. But again, the courts cannot give that sort of immediate trial and cannot give immediate conviction. With the result, the under trial prison continues. 66% of the people of this population is under trial. Right. Then it was suggested, all right, if some prisoner has undergone so much punishment, he should set free. It has gone by jerks. Some prisons have done, some states have done, some. Again, it was suggested that the women and the children, particularly children below 6, have to stay with the women, with the mothers and all, below 6. It was said that their cases, in the case of the women, this should be 1/3. If 1/3 of the punishment they have undergone, they should be released. But I am telling you, it is going by jerks. Some have accepted, some have not accepted. There is no uniformity. Third, as far as the protection, as far as I am talking police, as far as protection, or safety is again a very major feature. In Punjab, at one time, they had recovered 1,549 mobiles from few prisons. How they have been smuggled, I don't know. Drugs were smuggled, it was not possible because the police and the prison staff were different. And the prison staff that is being smuggled into because the police is not holding them back at the parameters. Right. Police says that it is smuggled in, that the internal administration, that is security guard, etc., prison guard, etc., are not vigilant. With the result, there is a dichotomy as far as the enforcement is concerned.
Right.
Next point, which is again very important. Most of the senior people who may be responsible, who should be responsible for enforcing discipline, etc., they do not want to go to the prison appointment in the police. The police appointment, they will try to go away, no, why should we go unnecessary? So most of the people who do not want assignment, they are forced into the prison enforcement. Right. Now I would like to tell you, a very important factor about this sort of thing was, at one time it was suggested that all right, we should do something and we should try to restrict this population in a manner that we have different places. What happened was in Bihar. It happened like that when this hue and cry started and the Supreme Court stepped in, that some of the shelter homes, which is almost isolated places where women were assaulted, there was sexual harassment. When it came to the notice of the Supreme Court, they had lot of condemnation. What I am trying to say is there is a multiplicity of issues.
Absolutely.
And you cannot deal all the issues at a time, but one major issue is A, the infrastructure, B, the accommodation, and C, the Swachh Bharat thing should come in also. Okay. And I am again and again saying that other things, that there should be less population, are only corollary because the accommodation is not there.
There are multiple problems. Mr. Singh, you're suggesting that there are multiple problems as far as prisons are concerned. I'm going to come back to you. Let me get in the other panelists as well right now. You know, Vartika, you've dealt with prisons. You've been all over the country really as far as prisons are concerned and watched them from close quarters and tried to, bring in reforms. We talk about model villages, we talk about model cities, model towns. Is there a model prison really, and can that be replicated? Can best practices be put to use in other prisons as well?
Okay, so I would like to first of all highlight the fact that there are more than 1400 prisons in India. There are only 18 prisons which are exclusively for women, and for men there are almost 70 open jails. For women there are only 4 open jails. Now first of all, this shows the disparity between men and women. We have 70 open jails and we think that maybe women do not need those open spaces, and we only have 7 open jails as of now. Second thing is about good practices. There are many prison officers who have tried to bring in positive change within the prisons, and that is why the Tinka movement which I run every year on the Day of Human Rights, we honor those prison officers as well who are doing some sort of an extraordinary work inside the jails. Mr. Singh was right that on many occasions actually the IPS officer who is heading some other department is not so willing to become the head of the prison, and that is how every time whenever there is a change in the regime, the dreams which are related to the so-called model jail takes a back seat, because prison is something, if you want to make some sort of a change, you need to be passionate about it, and number two, you need to understand the subject, and thirdly, you need to have that kind of human approach in you. But having said that, it is also to be highlighted that there are a couple of prisons in India at least where this kind of a change has emerged very clearly. For example, in Telangana, for example, in Himachal Pradesh, and some of the prisons in Madhya Pradesh, they are trying to bring in a change which we can say can fall under the category of being a model jail. In Telangana, they have tried to change the entire model of a prison. They have one particular petrol pump which is run by women inmates and also by inmates who have now been released. So this is a kind of a rehabilitative practice which is being adopted by them. Similarly, in Shimla, that's a very good sign. In Shimla, at the Mall Road, you find there's a book cafe, and that cafe is run by the inmates. Now, when you take this kind of an initiative and when it is covered by the media and when it is highlighted, it makes a huge difference. Like, for example, I have a couple of images which are made by the inmates, and all these images show the creative side of the inmates. For example, this particular image. In this particular image,
you can lift it up a little bit. Yes, actually, yeah.
The inmate is trying to show some sort of a positivity inside the prison. He is trying to depict that even if he is in captivity, he would like to make change in his life. This particular image, this is an eye-opening kind of an image. This is made by an inmate who is lodged in Bilaspur. And through this image, he is highlighting the fact that every inmate would like to be accepted by the society, and this is the most difficult thing for an inmate. So what I'm trying to say is that prison is not only about the inmates who are inside the jails. Prisons should also think about the inmates who are going to get out of the society.
Yeah, rehabilitation is also very important.
Rehabilitation,
absolutely.
And they are to be accepted by the society.
Yes.
So we need to work on that path as well.
Surely. Vipul Woodgan, like Mr. Singh was pointing out, in his opening remark, there are multiplicity of problems really as far as our jails and prisons are concerned. What needs to be done really immediately? What short-term measures need to be taken, and what should be done in the long term really, do you think?
I think both long-term, short-term, medium-term, in everything, it's a systemic problem, and a systemic problem will not go by just addressing the jail. See what is jail connected with. It is connected with police, it is connected with courts, it is connected with legal aid, and then comes the prison. So, if you work on each one of them and you see that how disposal of cases is happening, for instance, the disposal of cases, and I'm again coming back to the same theme, that if you see the vulnerable people, the poor, the minorities, the SC, ST, then you see even women and children, and you see the graph of disposal of cases, normal cognizable cases disposal, and the disposal of cases against women and children. You would see it's eye-opening. You see that the disposal is much lower. It should be higher, except probably 1 or 2 states. The disposal of women and cases relating to women and children is so low. Why should it be so low? Again, legal aid, when it is a right of every prisoner in a democratic country like India, then why shouldn't the legal aid be given, properly, and things like use of technology where you can have televised appearances in court and things like that. So many of these things are connected, and if you see, there are norms. BPRD manual of jails, which is 2003 manual, is a very decent document. It talks about dignity in every sense. It talks about health, it talks about even education, vocational training, everything. And it needs to be supervised by a legal officer, by a judge. In fact, district judge, Vartika would tell us, they are supposed to visit every jail. But that visit is not happening. CHRI, Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, did a study, and they found only in 1% cases the visits are done by the judges.
Right.
So if we are treating it like that, I mean, how are we going to reach anywhere? Once again, in 2018, there is a very good judgment. I think Justice Lokur was heading that bench, which has given some directives. if we just go by even the earlier judgments, excellent judgments, very good reports on prisons in India have come out, but I think we have this habit of sleeping over it. It needs very good management and it needs implementation of what is already there.
Right, absolutely. You know, Satya Prakash, court, of course, the Supreme Court has taken cognizance of this particular matter and is looking at it very keenly and closely and trying to deal with this problem. But part of the problem, like you mentioned, like Vipul Budgal mentioned, are the courts themselves. You know, now how do we change that?
No, Vipul has rightly pointed out that it's not just jails. Jails are connected with police system, jails are connected with judicial system, legal aid systems. All these systems which are connected with the jail system must be working in tandem. Otherwise, it's not going to solve. One particular point Vipul has mentioned, the population of women in prison. Women population in prison, and particularly women and children, it's not that high.
The disposal is low.
Disposal is low, but population as such is not that high. I think women population is 4 point something or 5.
It's about 18,000 women inmates.
Across India. So
Yes.
in a population of 3 to 4 lakh, 18,000 is not, the number is not huge, absolute number is not huge, but the disposal is not happening and it can be expedited. It's not a big deal if the system takes it up on a priority basis, it can be expedited. In fact, that has been the attempt even in plea bargain and even under section 436A, which I talked about in my previous segment. Even under that, where a particular prisoner has spent in jail a time which is which is exceeding half the period which he is supposed to undergo if convicted, then he or she has to be released. Even in that, women are supposed to be given a priority, but that's not happening. But one particular point which Mr. Singh has hinted at, the real problem, I talked about two problems. First is the under trial prisoners, second is the corruption in jails. Corruption is huge. So whatever system you have built and whatever things we are trying to implement through civil society, through various government schemes, it's not percolating down to the last prisoner in jail. So if corruption is tackled properly in prisons, because it's a place where it's not open to the press, it's not open to the civil society, it's not open to the even civil administration.
It's closed at the end of the day.
Closed. So whatever is happening over there, and on top of it, if the scheduled visits of judges were supposed to visit jails and look after things, and if there are some problems, they are supposed to provide solutions. If even that is not happening, it means it's a serious problem.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That has to be regularized, and even there should be some mechanism through which even members of the civil society, members of the media, they should be visiting jails, and there should be a systemic. We must build the system. We must open the system to the civil society and media, so that if there are problems which the system has somehow overlooked, deliberately or otherwise, the other organs of the society are in a position to point it out, because once it is pointed out, then maybe judiciary, the prison system, or any other, the government, they might take some corrective measures, and it can be addressed.
All right. Mr. Singh, a very important question that the Supreme Court raised today during the hearing was, of course, the court asked, are prisoners considered as humans by the officials?
I think we come around the same thing. As it is, that earlier it was at times they were treated very inhumanly inside. The food was just not good, the clothing was useless, the treatment was absolutely inhuman. With the passage of time, some improvement has taken place. But I am telling you that how many commissions of inquiry, how many committee, BPRD committee, somebody referred to the 2003 probably, or somewhere there. Now we are already in 2009, 2019, 2018. Now what is the improvement? How many people have implemented this recommendation? We had a police commission report for reforms in the police. The police commission reports were sent to all the states. Most of the states have not implemented it. Because of their jurisdiction, they have not implemented it. This has not been implemented. The entire system, the entire criminal justice system has to work at tandem. Then only you can have improvement in the ancillary system. Now, jail is indirectly falling under the criminal justice or indirectly, because trial is being delayed. Then people are put to judicial custody and they continue to the judicial custody. Investigation is delayed, they cannot go, they are not charge sheeted. Then there is all along, the postings are not there. Then the police reforms have not implemented to the extent that the police ratio should be so much that they are able to have the control over corruption inside or outside. With the result, the entire system, that is, needs a holistic approach to such sort of thing. This is no doubt. But you tell me, we considered some prison as very ideal prison. Some time back, we considered Tihar jail as a very, very ideal prison. That this prison, this thing, people were given awards for that ideal prison, Tihar jail. With the passage of time, in this very prison, people who were under trial, they committed suicide. We know very well that people committed suicide by hanging off. What was inside? What was happening inside? Not possible, because they are all jumbled up. There is no such thing that you are keeping a watch over some of them who are psychologically ill. At one stage, as you said, the court had recommended that those people who are convicted for life imprisonment or for ultimately execution under 302, then these cases should be first treated or psychologically tested. But nothing has happened. I am trying to say that everything has to be done in a holistic manner.
Absolutely.
The trust has to be a holistic, piecemeal trust, and one recommendation comes, you do something, by the time the recommendation is implemented, the problems multiply. By the time the recommendations
points
are
taken.
to the state,
I'm going to take the points that you're making to the other panelists as well, because I've got very limited time on the program. So quick closing comments from all my guests, starting first with you, Vartika, on what rights do prisoners have?
See, prisoners have every right to live properly, with dignity, and they have the right to dream about their life, which is after the prison. Now, there is a 3-member committee which has been constituted under the chairmanship of Justice Amitav Roy. Earlier, Justice Madan B. Lokur was looking at the inhuman conditions of inmates in prisons. And now, Mr. Amitav Roy, he would be looking at the conditions of inmates of different prisons and along with BPR&D. And I think this particular committee will look at all the rights which concerns the inmate, and they will also be taking feedback from various sections of the society, so that those ideas could be implemented, which is very, very important. Because those who are outside the prison, they cannot always decide what should happen inside the prison. It is very, very important to also listen to the inmates who were once upon a time inside the prison.
Absolutely. Vipul Gurgal, Sipal Singh spoke about the mental problems or the mental issues really that the inmates go through. How important is it for them to have access to psychiatrists and such kind of treatment?
You see, what happens is that you have there have been standards set by, say, agencies like United Nations, which India has supported wholeheartedly. Now, there was something to be done about review committees. Every district should have an under trial review committee, as Satyaprakash ji had earlier said, that if there is an offence which is compoundable, or if there is somebody who is a first time offender, or if there is something which can be condoned in some way, that you get this committee of very big people, important experts. They can actually get some of these people to go out. The second thing I must say is that huge mismanagement which happens. The CAG has brought it out several times that the budgets which are allocated to the prisons are not even spent. So if the budgets are left unspent, that means we are doing something really horrible.
Absolutely. Satyaprakash, considering that prisons house criminals, do prisons have special rights?
Yeah. Not special rights, but the under trial prisoners or even condemned prisoners, even death row convicts. The Supreme Court has said Article 14, Article 21, so right to equality and even right to life and liberty and to live with dignity, human dignity, it's available to even death row prisoners till the time they are hanged. So all the facility, the court in today's order, the court has said you cannot restrict meeting with family, friends, close family members or lawyers or psychiatrists. They have to be allowed access to the prisoner, and they have to be given newspapers, and all such facilities have to be extended to them. So Supreme Court has made it clear that they have to be given right to live with human dignity even till the last breath. Even if they are going to be hanged till the last breath, all these rights are available to them.
All right. Mr. Singh, close the show for us with your concluding remarks in 30 seconds. I'm out of time on the program.
Yes. I feel that as far as all these things are required should be done. But the persons who are visiting the jails, they should go with a passion of improvement, not like a stereotype robot visit and just giving some remarks and coming out.
Okay.
They must be dedicated people who are concerned with the human values. Then they visit the prison and they find, then it should be implemented, whatever they are finding, and it should be taken to logical conclusion.
All right.
Second part, which is very important from my angle.
You know, Mr. Singh, unfortunately, I have to interrupt you there because we'll have to wrap up the show right now. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it on this edition of The Big Picture. See you again next time.